In 2021, Elizondo spoke on what his investigation had discovered at an event attended by virtually the entirety of mainstream American media, and many global sources as well.
It's Tucker Carlson. He's like the only person that took UFOs seriously for the longest time.
Seems to be a very distinct congruency between UAP, associated UAP activity, and our nuclear technology, whether it be propulsion.
But I privately think that he only takes UFOs seriously because the rest of the media doesn't. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's... He's only doing it because it's like, ooh, I'm counterculture, I'm the edgy reporter. I don't think he actually cares about or believes in UFOs or any of that.
And that's concerning to the point where we've actually had some of our nuclear capabilities disabled by these things. When pressed by a reporter to clarify that he was saying America's nuclear capabilities had been disabled by something which could not be explained, Elizondo responded, "There is absolutely evidence that comports to the notion that UAPs have an active interest in our nuclear technology and have in the past interfered with some of our nuclear capabilities."
Yeah, they disable them regularly.
Crucially, Elizondo added another nugget to his address. Furthermore, those same observations have been seen overseas in other countries.
No.
They too have had the same...
This isn't Tucker. Tucker is Fox News reporter.
Same incidents.
This is a U.S. senator.
This is a global issue. If it is established at the highest levels of American power that UFOs have taken an active interest in the country's nuclear capabilities, could the same be true in other countries? Is it really a global issue? During the Cold War, the U.S. Air Force and British Royal Air Force jointly operated multiple bases in the UK, which housed nuclear weapons pointed directly at the Soviet Union. In late December of 1980, mystifying incidents took place.
It is nice to see. Why didn't he dye his goatee? That's a good question. But it is nice to see that, like, Fox News... I mean, Fox News is the most viewed news station in America right now. Excuse me. And the most viewed reporter on Fox News is Tucker Carlson. So if the most viewed reporter in America is taking UFOs seriously, that's kind of a step in the right direction.
Place at two of these bases on the same night, the latter of which has become known as Britain's Roswell. First, an air traffic controller at the RAF Bentwaters base in Suffolk, named Ivan Barker, reported something unbelievable in the sky. "We looked up on the radar scope and saw something not like anything I'd seen before," Barker explained. "It had to be moving Mach 5, 6, 7, or 8,
Russia's not even a real place.
Anything other than possibly a missile." As Barker looked up from the radar to view it directly from his observation tower, the craft moved closer. It was, in Barker's words, like a helicopter hovering, except with a helicopter you get movement up and down. This was stationary. It was between about 1,500 and 2,000 feet high. The thing was at least a city block in diameter. It was shaped like a giant basketball with portholes around the center, and lights emanating
A lot of people would.
"I was shocked," Barker professed.
What if they're like a gross slime thing?
Basketballs don't fly." At the same time, only a few miles away, at the RAF Woodbridge base, a security team led by Colonel Charles Holt reported seeing a small triangular-shaped craft in nearby Rendlesham Forest.
Is this the Rendlesham Forest incident?
Approximately 3
Do you guys know the Rendlesham Forest incident? This shit's crazy.
meters on a side, dark metallic in appearance with strange markings. It would appear to be winking and was shedding molten metal and silently moving through the trees, and at one point it actually approached us. Then it very quickly and silently vanished at high speed. "What could this craft have been?" Holt was asked. "I have no idea what we saw that night, but I do know it was under intelligent control. My theory is that it was from another dimension or extraterrestrial." Much as with the Maelstrom incident in Montana, as the UFOs were spotted at Bentwaters and Woodbridge, the nuclear weapons at each base suddenly, inexplicably, became inoperable. Those nukes they had pointed at the Soviet Union? Well, they were a no-go. Most simply, these incidents show that the connection between UFOs and nuclear capabilities is a global issue, as Luis Elizondo suggested. But in fact, it goes much deeper than that. Back in 1954, UFO culture did not exist on the global scale it does today.
True.
If someone were to report an alleged alien encounter, they would not have the stories of others to draw upon when creating their own. This is what makes a local broadcast scene that year.
Oh, that's area what is that? District 80 something? District 8. That was a good movie. I watched that one. I actually want to watch the sequel that came out recently.
Staffordshire, England, so compelling.
Staffordshire's had a whole crop of flying saucers.
Huh.
Spots in the sky, lights in the sky, strange things. But the strangest of all was seen one day over this cottage. Mr. and Mrs. Rustenberg were living there, quietly, out in the country. And, well, you just tell me what you saw.
Well, this was one ordinary day. I was waiting for my husband to come home from work, and my two sons went to Seifert to school, and I was getting changed, and I heard this terrific noise. It was just like a giant cauldron of water being poured
It's good.
over a
It's
fire.
decent.
A sort of noise, you know. And my first reaction was, oh, the children. I thought maybe a plane was crashing or something like that. And I slipped my jumper on and went outside to find my two sons lying flat on the ground in the garden in front of the house, shouting, "Mummy, Mummy, there's a flying saucer." Well, naturally, I just said, "Come on, don't be stupid. Come in the house." But felt sort of a strange sensation. Wended my way up the side of the house to where we had a pump, where we used to get all our water from, and automatically looked up to see this, all I can describe, this huge Mexican hat. It was stationary, this thing, and it was bright silver in colour.
So basically the story of District 9 is like
tilted.
This massive mothership is hovering in the air over South America, and it's there for like weeks, and there's nothing coming out of it, there's nothing going into it, and then eventually somebody the government goes and like cuts it open, and all they find is all of these like malnourished dying aliens, and they create like a slum for them to live in, and they like start using their technology, and then one dude gets his like arm cut off or something. This isn't Russian, this is in English. This is a British woman, and his arm gets like replaced with an alien arm or something, so now he's like half human, half alien, and he has to like use their technology to help them get home. It was good.
To sort of, I could see the occupants in it.
You saw people in it?
I saw people in it.
It was a commentary on apartheid.
These people were beautiful people.
She does
That's
look like
the
a
only way I can
babushka.
describe them. They had long golden hair, like a page boy bob, just like the old kings. You used to see photographs of the old kings, and the colour of the hair was golden. Now, I was really...
What were they dressed in?
They had a sort of a polo neck jumper affair, like a ski top suit, in pale blue. Now, these people weren't sat behind, one behind the other. They were sat together, but this, whatever it was tilted. So
I got the gist
I
of
could
it.
see them, and they could see me.
Were you looking at them through windows, through portholes? Or
No, not portholes. It was just sort of the...
I didn't even notice actually
like
until
a
you
cockpit, I
mentioned
suppose,
it.
that had this perspex or glass or whatever it was. They could see me anyway, and I could see them. And they had beautiful faces. I shall never forget their faces as long as I live. Their foreheads seemed to be a bit larger than, you know, the bottom of their faces as normal people you would expect to see. But maybe this was just whatever they had round their heads, which was like a transparent fishbowl. And they just looked, and I was absolutely paralytic with fear. I couldn't move, although my mind was ticking over. And they looked so sympathetic that I was just mesmerised for what seemed to be, ages, but it could have only been seconds. And I turned to sort of look down at the boys, was unaware that they were with me, because I was so absorbed. And the next thing, I looked up, and it was gone.
how low had it been?
It had been the height, I couldn't tell you. But the house that you've seen, it was just on top of the roof. It was hovering on
Oh
top
wow,
of
that's
the roof.
close.
How big was it compared with the size of the house?
It swallowed the whole circumference of the roof. I couldn't see, the roof was completely blotted out. The chimneys I couldn't see. All I could see was this massive object that I described as like a Mexican hat without the bubbles.
And then it flew away sideways or upwards? Or?
No, I didn't see. I just looked up and it had gone. But I assume it went straight up. Because for a short while after in the sky, I looked around and I said to my two boys, "Well, can you see anything? Can you see anything?" And they said, "There it is, Mum." And they pointed up, and I watched it. It was just like a little cotton meal in the sky. And it circled us 3 times. It went round 3 times, and then it just shut off. And that was it.
There are a lot of
Then I
sightings
felt
like this,
down, I
actually.
myself afterwards. I feared that I might have had an hallucination. But then I knew I hadn't had, because my sons were so sure about what they'd seen and what I'd seen. And it went through my mind that it was a secret weapon from Russia, and then I thought, well, it can't be that, because if they had something like that, they wouldn't need to fear anybody or anything.
Were you scared by it? Did you run
Oh,
indoors?
I was petrified. I couldn't move. I couldn't move a muscle. I was paralyzed with fear.
Now, usually
now,
the Pleiadians
because
have
now,
that whole,
when I look back,
be not afraid, and then they, like, project love and light at you, but I guess they didn't do that this time.
you know, I think, what an amazing thing to have happened, and for me to have seen it.
And when your husband came home, where were you?
Well, when my husband came home from the office, I was locked in the house with my children, under a big kitchen table that we were using.
Under the table?
Under the table, yes. It's funny now when I look back, you know, it sounds absolutely ridiculous, but this is the truth. This happened. And that's it. We were ridiculed. It was very embarrassing at the time, and people, they possibly thought, oh, she's a nutter. But, you know, who cares? This is something that happened to me, and I'm a practically minded person.
You know, I believe her. You know, just like the way she's describing it, and like she's just very matter of fact about it. Her face, like, she doesn't look like she's lying. There's no edgy boy Pleiadians. That is not a thing. That's not true. There are no edgy Pleiadians. They are all love and light. But I believe this, especially if it happened in the 50s. The 50s was 100% Pleiadian
While
encounters.
the story is exceptional, note that while Mrs. Rustenberg tells it, she is not dramatic, not obviously putting on a performance for the benefit of the camera, but rather measured and resolute. Her body language that of someone who has nothing to hide and nothing to gain from lying. But what makes Mrs. Rustenberg's
Attitude Era Pleiadians
story so particularly relevant here is not her apparent sincerity, but rather where her story took place. Only a few years before her alleged encounter, Mrs. Rustenberg's hometown of Staffordshire, England, was the location of the largest military accident ever recorded. November 27, 1944, forever known to residents of Staffordshire as the day the world blew up. On that day, over 4,000 tons of bombs, shells, and rifle ammunition stored in an underground RAF facility were accidentally ignited.
Oh my God.
The result was the largest non-nuclear explosion in human history. Under a mushroom cloud thousands of feet high, the surrounding countryside was obliterated, farms wiped out, and a reservoir destroyed. Fields were littered with the carcasses of mutilated livestock and fish, while many people died. Left behind at the site of the explosion was a smoldering crater some 100 feet
I
deep
believe this
and
was an
400
accident.
yards across, known today as the Hanbury crater. Making things worse, though the explosion had been immense, it had not impacted the entire underground stash of weapons. Not all the bombs had exploded. It was too dangerous to attempt to recover the undetonated explosives, the ground too unstable, and the threat of another explosion too high, forcing the government to leave the volatile cache underground.
Oh my God.
Does this give Mrs. Rustenberg's story of her alien encounter more credibility?
Not particularly, because they're not nuclear. The Pleiadians and other alien races seem to only care about nuclear, because they believe that when... Okay, so allegedly, according to other accounts that I have heard, when you split the atom, you are letting in energy from lower dimensions. That is, drawing in, like, demons, essentially. And they don't like that. That's not good for you. So, that might need to be taken with a grain of salt, but that is what I have heard.
The connection between UFOs and dangerous weapons has already been established at the highest levels of American power.
Vape and
Perhaps
right
the
back.
UFO Mrs. Rustenberg saw was just there to check on the ticking time bomb beneath her feet. Think back to the rays of a UFO causing a nuclear missile to tumble out of space outside Big Sur, California in 1964. What were the results of these rays of crimson light shining on Reactor 4 at Chernobyl? In 2002, the Russian news outlet Pravda provided an answer and an investigation on the incident. The UFO brought the radiation level down, they reported. The level was decreased almost 4 times. This probably prevented a nuclear blast. So, maybe it is not weapons
Aliens are trying to stop us from using nukes.
specifically which are connected with UFOs.
However, there's 2 reasons they might be doing that, right? Okay, so the first reason is altruistic. The aliens don't want us using nukes because nukes are bad for us and bad for the planet. I'm sorry, there's 3 reasons they might not want us doing it. The second reason is because it could cause long-term damage to the planet, right? And they want to take over our planet. And if they want to take over our planet, they don't want long-term irradiated areas that they can't use. You know what I mean? And then the third reason is they don't want us using them because they are a threat to them directly. Those are the only 3 reasons. One of them is altruistic, and 2 of them are not altruistic. So, I don't know. Just because the aliens seem like they might potentially be good guys doesn't mean we should believe them. Beware the bearers of false gifts.
UFOs, but rather humanity's tendency to come close to destroying itself. On March 11, 2011, the devastating Tohoku earthquake and tsunami hit off the east coast of Japan. It was the most powerful earthquake ever recorded in Japan, and in the nearby city of Fukushima, the results were dire. The quake caused not one,
Did
but
aliens
3 meltdowns
intercede
at
at
the Fukushima
Fukushima?
Daiichi nuclear power plant, spewing radioactive contamination into the atmosphere and flooding radioactive isotopes into the Pacific Ocean. It was the worst nuclear disaster since Chernobyl. Yet, much like Chernobyl, at the time the plant was melting down, unusual activity was spotted in the skies above.
If I had to choose between the New World Order and the aliens, I'd pick the aliens. I'll say that.
It. Strange white orbs moving unnaturally in the sky. What were these orbs
Especially
up to?
if they
And is
show
it
me
possible,
Ashtar.
as is alleged in the case of Chernobyl, that they were somehow mitigating the disaster? Could the Fukushima nuclear meltdown have been worse if not for these UFOs? Some say an answer was provided in 2016 when the 6.9 magnitude Fukushima earthquake struck just southeast of the city. Though the Fukushima nuclear plant's operations had been shut down after 2011, it still contained nuclear reactors which would take decades to decommission.
Aliens
Reactors which
responsible
once more
for
would threaten
containing
meltdown in the face
Fukushima.
of disaster. As the quake hit, those still working inside the plant watched with terror as part of the cooling system required to prevent such a meltdown inexplicably shut down. At just that moment, a UFO appeared in the skies above the plant.
No.
Incredibly, despite the shutdown of part of the cooling system, almost no temperature
fucking
increase
way.
was recorded in the reactors. There was no meltdown and no nuclear disaster. Could the UFOs seen in the skies as the quake hit have somehow prevented disaster? In light of the alleged instances at Fukushima and Chernobyl,
I
and
need
the
an
well-documented
additional
connection
source on
between
that.
UFOs and nuclear weapons, perhaps an intercepted broadcast from a purported galactic command warning about a disaster which threatens your world is not as far-fetched as it may have seemed. Perhaps Robert Salas was not wrong when he surmised aliens were trying to send us a message about our destruction. Then again, maybe it goes beyond simply an intercepted broadcast, beyond abstract warnings. Maybe it is more of a partnership. Haim Eshed is something of a legend in his own time. For 30 years, he served as the head of
never
Israel's
heard of
space
him.
program, 3 times earning the Israel Defense Prize, the highest civilian defense honor in the state of Israel, while personally
Is this where they're... Never mind, I'm not going to say it.
overseeing the launch of 20 Israeli satellites. He is appropriately known as the father
Nice
of
screen
Israel's
capture,
space
bro.
program. This is why it was so stunning when in 2020, after retiring from his post, Eshed gave an interview
Nice
to
screen
Yediot
capture,
Aharonot,
just keep
the
highlighting
largest
shit.
newspaper in Israel, in which he spoke of things previously unheard of from someone in his position. Aliens have not only already visited Earth, Eshed dramatically claimed, but have contacted and forged relationships with world governments. These
Specifically Israel. Yeah, this is a thing. Apparently it's been leaked by this guy they're talking about that Israel has direct contact with aliens. As if that's supposed to, like, stop the people who, like, are anti-Semitic conspiracy theorists. As if that's supposed to stop them and not just be like, we fucking told you, bro. Like, come on.
These aliens, according to Eshed, represent an intergalactic space federation which has been watching over humanity, tracking all
Oh, you mean the Galactic Federation of Light?
nuclear activity and preventing nuclear wars. Not all the governments of the world know, he explained. There's
I
a
don't know
group
if
of
it's
partners,
Israel or
Americans,
Israel or
Russian,
whatever the
Japanese,
fuck.
British, Chinese,
I'm just
who
gonna
are
pronounce it
coordinating
differently
not
every
to reveal
time.
this, and they asked not to publish it. Perhaps Haim Eshed is lying. Perhaps he would throw away an award-winning career on a ruse. Or maybe he...
Donald Trump was going to tell us about the fucking aliens and then he didn't? How dare he?
Is merely the first in such a position of power to tell the truth.
I wonder if Biden knows about the
Federation
aliens.
really be watching over humanity
Obviously,
without most
Obama
of us
knows
even
about the
knowing what's
aliens
happening?
because he has a Mars
Or maybe
base.
we know more than we realize. It was July of 1992 when Peter Curry awoke to a distressing situation. He was paralyzed, unable to move, but fully conscious. More alarmingly, he realized a strange woman was sitting on top of him, straddling his body.
There she
She
is.
had unusual features. Blonde hair and milky white skin, with large blue eyes and protruding cheekbones.
Yeah.
In the corner of the bed sat another woman, an Asian-looking female, according to Curry.
And then they sucked and fucked him all night long, and he woke up with a sticky mess in his pants, and he said it was aliens.
Slowly and without speaking, the woman on Curry's chest turned to the other woman, touched her stomach, then pointed to the sky. As she did, the two strange women disappeared. Afterwards, Curry searched the room for evidence of their having been there, and actually found it. Unlike in so many other
Told ya.
instances, this time there seemed to be physical evidence left behind. A single hair. Feeling he had proof of an alien encounter, Curry brought the hair to an independent biochemistry lab for analysis.
Really?
And the results were unbelievable. The hair was optically clear, like nylon fishing line. According to biomolecular chemist Horace Drew, there's nobody on Earth who has hair that is optically clear. Moreover, whereas human hair has one DNA type, this hair had two. A blue-eyed, light-skinned Celtic lineage at the root, and a rare Chinese lineage in the shaft. How were these things possible?
What?
To the lab scientists, it seemed as though the hair might really be alien. Note that the alleged aliens Peter Curry...
Why? Okay. If it's an alien hair, why does it have two different human DNAs in it? And why is it clear? What?
encountered did not have the appearance of the aliens we know in popular culture, those small gray beings with bulbous heads and large black eyes. No, Curry's aliens appeared more human. Blonde hair, blue eyes, the milky white skin. She looked almost Scandinavian. Recall Mrs. Rustenberg from Staffordshire and how she described the aliens she saw. These people were beautiful people. That's the only way I can describe them. They had long golden hair, like a page boy bob. Did she and Peter Curry come into contact with the same type of aliens? And if so, who are they? Some 500 light-years from Earth, nestled within the Taurus constellation,
Listen,
lies the Pleiadian
because
star
fuck
cluster.
you. Well, they
Made
did
up of
fuck him,
hundreds of
actually.
stars. 7 are visible to the naked eye on a clear, dark night, leading the cluster to become referred to in modern times as the Seven Sisters. For as long as human beings have been recording their thoughts, the Pleiades star cluster has held a place of special and strangely similar importance. In ancient Egypt, the 7 visible
True.
stars of the Pleiades cluster represented 7 goddesses providing nourishment to worshippers.
They really did.
Scandinavian tradition spoke of the Pleiades as the daughters of
Pleiadian sorority girls just come to Earth for, like, they, like, find a hot dude and they're like, ha ha ha.